Well, I'm going to try to cover a lot of ground today. Some very troubling prophetic partnerships are about ready to be formed. But before I do that, here is a update on what's happening with the Brexit. As many of you know, the UK has exited the European Union, but it will be somewhere around 2 years from now that they actually officially are gone. Now, that doesn't mean that they are going to be completely out of the European Union. They'll still have partnerships. But even in the 6 weeks that have passed since the exit, it says more than 6 weeks have passed since voters in the United Kingdom authorized the country's exit from the European Union. Enough time for some of the referendum's economic effects to manifest. In the aftermath of the Brexit vote, the British economy has already started to show signs of weakness, with data for July signaling slowdowns in manufacturing, services, and construction. In the Eurozone, the economic impact has been moderate, but uncertainty about the split will probably reduce investment, private consumption, and trade. In all likelihood, the United Kingdom's economy will decelerate even more in the months ahead. Now, this coming from Stratfor. And in the subheading of this article, it says, in an attempt to stimulate the United Kingdom's economy, the Bank of England slashed interest rates from 0.5 to 0.25% on August 4th. Now, certainly, we're just looking at the beginning stages of what the effects of this Brexit will have on the UK and on the European Union, but time will tell. At this point in time, nobody's predicting that the UK is going into economic collapse. Now, on the other hand, there is a big rebellion going on in the European Union, and all the anger is being directed toward Germany. So as elections start to pop up in the coming years, you might begin to see parties taking control of individual nations in the European Union with nationalistic tendencies, and that may very well unseat those who are a part of the European Union globalist type of community. I have been hearing a lot of talk of the breakup and the impending doom of the European Union, and frankly, I think that's biblical. You know, the Bible says that the nation that burnt Israel to the ground back in AD 70 would be the same nation, or group of nations, I should say, that will ultimately bring peace with Israel and many. Now, you might say, well, what is this peace all about? Well, number one, it's with many. And number two, it will be with Rome, or should I say the nations of the Roman Empire, old Roman Empire, which today is modern-day European Union. Now, a lot of people try to say, well, there is also an Islamic side to the European, or to the old Roman Empire. But the truth of the matter is that when Israel was sacked, no Islamic nations were involved when that took place. In fact, as I've said before, Dr. David Reagan did a nice piece on this particular subject, and he basically proved that the only ones that were involved in the destruction of Israel was indeed Roman soldiers, who were all from Rome. In other words, there wasn't a brigade here and a brigade there that were from one of the Islamic nations. This was an all Roman affair. I know a lot of people are trying to tie the Islamic world into being the country, or should I say the group of nations that will ultimately make peace with Israel, but that's simply the facts on the ground at this time simply don't add up. In fact, when the Arab League had a chance to bring peace to Israel through their Saudi peace plan, they defaulted to the French peace initiative and said that they had agreed to go ahead and put their backing behind the French initiative. And that's just recently. And on Israel's part, they were very interested in making peace toward the Saudi peace initiative and not the French initiative. In fact, they really don't want to have anything to do with the French initiative. In their mind, the French initiative means sanctions, isolation, and possibly UN condemnation, with the United States not vetoing that condemnation. And they realize that the weight of the European Union usually will carry the weight of the United States against them. I mean, as far as the Saudi peace plan is concerned, Israel would have probably done the same thing they've been doing all these years with the Palestinians. And that is go through a number of different peace summits, peace conferences, whatever you want to call it, and continue this delaying situation. But with the French initiative, it looks as though that as this thing snowballs and more European Union nations get behind it, and you're going to see the United States get behind it as well. So the weight of the European Union with the French initiative is much greater than and more of an impact on Israel, because Israel is a major trading partner with the European Union. So all these things add up, and will likely see Israel see sanctions possibly. It may not go that far, but I think what Israel's going to do in order to avoid the inevitable, I believe that Israel's eventually going to come to terms with the European Union bloc, and then when I say the core, because I think that the European Union eventually they are going to break up, and a core set of nations, likely 10 nations, because that's what the Bible does indicate, will ultimately take place. That the Antichrist will rise up out of a 10-nation kingdom, will form, and that's who Israel will ultimately make peace with many with. And that many will include, number one, the European Union core, and probably those that aren't in the core anymore, and the moderate Arab world or the Arab League. Now certainly this is speculation on my part, but I believe it's biblical speculation that's going to lead to the ultimate demise of the European Union as we know it right now, and will be broken down up into a 10-nation kingdom that will ultimately bring peace with Israel. And what's going on in the European Union right now economically will ultimately lead to that breakup. Now that's Bible prophecy heading number 1. Now number 2 is even more of a shocking story than number 1. Now let me tell you about this heading. The heading is from the Business Insider and carried by Yahoo, but it says Russia may be preparing a long-term game-changing move with Turkey. And let me tell you a little about the background of this story. I realize that many believe that the coup that took place in Turkey is a false flag, but the truth of the matter is that rumor was started by Mr. Erdogan's arch enemy that presides now in Pennsylvania, Mr. Gulen, who, when Mr. Erdogan blamed him for orchestrating this latest coup, he said, no, all this is just a power grab by Mr. Erdogan to try to maintain more control of the army than he has right now. And he is actually the one behind this coup, and he orchestrated it. Well, when many of the conspiracy theory prophecy channels heard this, they picked this up and took it at face value that, yes, this is a false flag and this is not a coup. Well, the truth of the matter is it was actually a coup. Every legitimate news service, such as Stratford, Foreign Policy Magazine, the National Business Interest, those type of news outlets, they have never said anything about it being a false flag. They've always addressed it as a legitimate and real coup, and it's still going on today where thousands of people have died. And the military has almost been completely ripped out of its seams, and it's been shaken to its very core where whole divisions have been replaced. Tens of thousands of people have lost their jobs and have been placed in prison because of this coup. Some have been released, but tell you what, this shakeup is simply not over with yet, and there's still pockets of resistance in the country. But here's the point I'm trying to make right here. It's not necessarily about the coup, but it's where this is leading. The United States and the West has almost come out condemning Mr. Erdogan because he is no longer being democratic about this coup or about taking care of this problem, but has developed a strong arm in putting this coup down and destroying any remnants of the possibility that this could pop up again. And because of his strong arm tactics, the United States has really come out against Turkey. And the bottom line is that Mr. Erdogan, he believes that the democratic tactics that he's been using in order to fight terrorism has simply not been working, and he is now using his own tactics that leans more toward what Russia does in their country. And really what's been going on is that the United States and the West has been condemning his tactics, but Russia, they condemned the coup, and we're one of the first ones to come out to do so, and have not been condemning Turkey about their tactics at all. Here's a little excerpt from the article. It says the shift that's been going on may have been in the works since well before the uprising even occurred. Now they're talking about the shift from away from the West and into the arms of Russia and Iran. It says, however, as evidence mounted that Ankara, in the wake of 14 terrorist attacks on Turkish soil in just more than a year, was looking to move away from the ideology and towards security as the foundation of its foreign policy objectives. Meaning that the move away from what the West and the United States looks to be a move towards security in Turkey rather than democracy. In other words, what I'm reading from this article is that Turkey no longer believes that the democratic ideology of the United States and the West will not work in order to control terrorism and things like the coup that just took place in Turkey, but they believe that the ideology that Russia is using in their own country is probably more suited for them. And the criticism that this has been garnering from the United States and the West, Turkey is beginning to get to sour, and relations seem to be heading downward and away from the West. And here's another excerpt from this article. It says Russia may go for a long-term game-changing move and lure Turkey away from the West as part of a broader geopolitical reconfiguration. And it wasn't that long ago that Turkey downed one of Russia's jets and sent that relationship into a tailspin, and Russia ever since has been looking for an opportunity to get Turkey back on that situation. In fact, for a long time there, Turkey really could not get involved in the fight in the Syrian conflict because Russia now is in Syria and has never left, as many said that he would, but he hasn't. And Mr. Putin was looking for an opportunity to down one of their jets. But finally, a few weeks back, the reconciliation became public when Mr. Erdogan did apologize to Mr. Putin, and the Russian-Turkish relationship took a dramatic about-face. But it wasn't until this latest coup that Turkey openly began to court and to lean toward Russian ideology and a friendship again. And let me go ahead and reread this again. It says Russia may go for a long-term game-changing move and lure Turkey away from the West as part of a broader geopolitical configuration. Middle East expert Mark Perini, a visiting scholar at Carnegie Europe, wrote on Thursday. This is what he wrote. He continued, unlike Western capitals, Moscow has not bothered much with rule of law considerations, meaning that if somebody comes in, a group comes in and tries to take over through a coup or whatever the case may be, Russia's putting it down by any means necessary. They're not worried about the West. They're not worried about any human rights group or whatever the case may be. They're putting it down. Well, Mr. Erdogan feels like that's what he's going to do, he needs to do, in order to maintain power in his country. And going on with the article says, a trend toward a more authoritarian leadership in Turkey, one with fewer checks and balances than in any Western democracy, is not something to worry Russian President Vladimir Putin much. On the contrary, it helps him demonstrate that the Russian style of muscular governance is useful to Turkey at a time when the EU and the United States keep reminding Ankara of their own brand of liberal democracy. As such, an opportunistic convergence of minds might therefore emerge between the two leaders, with each having its own reasons when they meet next week in St. Petersburg, Perini said. But here's something that both Russia and Turkey are on opposite sides of. It says the clearest wrinkle in this potential game-changing rapport between Russia and Turkey is their support for opposing sides in the Syrian civil war. Russia intervened in the conflict on behalf of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in late September, whereas Turkey has been arming various Syrian opposition groups since 2011 and formally severed ties with the Assad regime in March of 2012. Well, if the Bible is correct, or I should say, if we are interpreting this correctly, that Turkey will at some point align themselves with Russia and Iran, they're going to have to change their support to Assad and to Syria. And, a lot of this is making sense now, how that Russia could bring an army down along with Turkey and Iran and other nations down upon Israel when the time comes in the Gog and Magog war found in Ezekiel 38. So I don't have any doubt whatsoever that at some point in time that Turkey is going to lean away from the West and toward Russia. I mean, it wouldn't shock me a bit if an announcement was made that Turkey was going to be leaving NATO. And I believe that's probably a future that we're probably looking at. But here's what a Wall Street Journal writer wrote regarding Turkey's efforts toward trying to overthrow Mr. Assad. It says, but as the Wall Street Journal wrote, it says Thursday, even Mr. Erdogan's determination to overthrow the Assad regime, which has reportedly been steadily waning, is likely to take a back seat as he restructures the Turkish military and focuses on purging his own country of suspected traitors. So the direction and the participation in Syria by the Turkish government may very well drop off and take a different direction in the days, months, years ahead. In fact, going on with the article, it says perhaps most indicative of this policy reset were comments made by the Turkish Prime Minister about Ankara's relationship with Damascus just 2 days before the attempted coup. This is what he says: it is our greatest and irrevocable goal, developing good relations with Syria and Iraq and all our neighbors that surround the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. We normalize relations with Russia and Israel. I'm sure we will normalize our relations with Syria as well. For the fight against terrorism to succeed, stability needs to return to Syria and Iraq. Now, there are some who will say, well, you know what, this Antichrist to come is going to rise up out of Turkey, and as we see, they're making peace with Russia, Syria, Iraq, and also with Israel. Well, they've already made peace with Israel. So if in fact that the Antichrist is coming out of Turkey, then we are in the tribulation period right now, meaning that we should be seeing the two witnesses any day now, or in fact probably should have already seen them pop up. Well, that hasn't happened. As I said in one of my previous videos, that these are signs that the tribulation period has begun. Well, if in fact the Antichrist is rising up out of Turkey, then we need to see two things happen very soon. One, the two witnesses popping up, a great revival in Israel, and the rebuilding of the temple on the Temple Mount. Those are things that need to take place in the first half of the tribulation period. And if that's not the case, then we need to eliminate Turkey from being the place in which the Antichrist will ultimately rise up out of. Frankly, I don't see that happening. I still think that the Bible is clear that it will be the revived Roman Empire, which is what's going on today with the European Union. That a revised European Union, a core unit, will rise up with 10 nations, and the Antichrist will rise up out of that core. Now, one thing you should take into consideration is that it may not be a 10-core nation when the peace is established with Israel and many, but it may very well break up shortly after that into a 10-nation kingdom in which 3 nations, the Bible says, will have to be subdued. That's found in Daniel 7:24. And you know, another point of Mr. Erdogan's success in this coup is that he just recently had a rally in his honor, and over 1 million people showed up. So the nation of Turkey is behind Mr. Erdogan in his attempts to maintain order and to put this coup down by any means. So if there's ever a time in which he's going to move away from the West and toward Russia and an alliance in that order, it would be now, because the Turkish people are behind him. But going on with the article, it says, it is little wonder then that Moscow would choose now to try to reset its relationship with Ankara. It says now that Turkey is moving away from NATO, and you know that's even evident with the world and Washington. Russia has an enormous interest in bringing Turkey into its fold. Lebanese parliament member Basham Shab told the Journal. He added, if Syria is important, talked about Russia, Turkey is infinitely more important, and Russia isn't going to sacrifice Turkey to please Assad, Hezbollah, or Iran. So this leader believes that Turkey is even more important. A relationship with Turkey is even more important than any relationship with Assad, Hezbollah, or Iran. But don't look for Russia to throw away that relationship either, but to build. I believe that they're all going to have to step in line to what Russia wants. And here in another article just recently, it says Putin encourages Iran to join Russia-led Eurasian alliance. So Russia's putting together this alliance right now under our nose here in Bible prophecy. And I'm just going to read a small headline from this. It says, Russian President Vladimir Putin has praised the successful cooperation between Moscow and Tehran and has expressed hope that a free trade zone can soon be established between Iran and the Russia-led Eurasian Economic Union. Now, certainly we've always known that Russia and Iran would have some type of union, and they do have some type of union, but it's also going to be with Syria. And basically, probably, I believe that Iraq's probably going to join that union as well. You know, I look for many of these nations to probably follow suit with Turkey and move away from the protection of NATO, the West, and the United States and join this union with Russia. That would be a major blow to the United States and the West. But as I said earlier, this is something that Bible prophecy does predict. And for a while there, it looked like just the opposite was going to take place, that Turkey was going to move away from any relationship with Russia and more toward NATO. Well, now the tables have turned completely, and Russia and Turkey are back in the arms of each other, and to even more of a greater extent than they were before. And you can bet that the West is very, especially the United States, is very worried about this new partnership relationship with Russia. So we'll have to wait and see how this turns out, but the next article is even more chilling. And it's coming out of Debka File. Now we need to take this with a grain of salt. When it comes out of Debka File, they have been known to embellish some things. But at the same time, they've been known to be correct on a number of things as well. So I won't discount it, but the article reads, it says Iran could have an operational nuke by 2017, by the end of 2017. And I've done a pre-read on this article, and a lot of the information that they're giving seems to be correct. Now, just to kind of brief you on this, it says that President Obama just came out and spoke to the world, assuring that the Iranian plan is working as it should, and that the Israelis are behind it, and that Iran is still a year away from any breakout, even if they were to go back to their nuclear program. But Israel has never really been on board with this. In fact, this is what they've said. The Israeli defense establishment believes that agreements have value only if they are based on reality. That's talking about the Iran agreement with the West. It says they have no value if the facts on the ground are opposite to the ones the agreement is based on. Documents reaching Debka Files intelligence sources in recent weeks bear some facts contained in unpublished sections of the nuclear accord, which is the joint comprehensive plan of action that Iran signed in Vienna with the U.S., China, France, Russia, and Germany back on July 14 in 2015. So speaking about the data that they received, it says this data is at odds with the official version that accord delayed Iran's short-term breakout capacity to a nuclear bomb by 10 years plus 1 year. It is now demonstrated that if Tehran decides to violate the accord, Iran retains the capability to achieve this goal in months and not years. The strongest confirmation of this fact comes from the horse's mouth. And what they're saying is that a number of Iranian officials have gotten up and said that they still have the capability of getting up to speed and creating a nuclear bomb in a very short amount of time, despite all the efforts of the West and the other partners that were involved in the JCPA. But going on with the article, it says U.S. administration officials' insistence that Iran will need a whole year to attain breakout capacity of its nuclear weapons program at the end of the 10-year moratorium is nullified by 3 covert Iranian steps. And here are the steps that they've come up with. It says, number 1, Iran has concealed from International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors entire clusters of second-generation IR-2M centrifuges, some by upgrading IR machines at home and some importing from Pakistan and Germany. So basically a country that's actually involved in trying to stop Iran, and bringing this agreement together is helping Iran achieve its goals. These hidden machines can substantially cut short the process of enriching uranium at the Natanz and Fordo plants up to weapons grade. Number 2, before signing the nuclear accord, Tehran stockpiled in Natanz alone 15,420 centrifuges, 9,156 of the first generation IR-1 version and 1,000 high-speed IR-2M enrichment machines. On the date of signing, the inspectors were shown 5,060 IR-1 centrifuges, all dismantled and stowed away in storage, along with the relevant feed equipment such as pipes, cooling systems, and electronics. That Iran is now in a position to reassemble its enrichment facilities within 45 days was admitted by Iran's president of the Atomic Energy Organization. Number 3, it says the American calculation of the time Iran would need to build a nuclear bomb was based on the quantity of low-grade enrichment uranium left with Iran for further refinement to weapon-grade level. Washington was satisfied that Tehran abided by the 300 kilograms limit set by the accord. However, Iran has since been revealed as cheating on that provision to be transferring as a much larger LEU stock to Oman and continuing to clandestinely turn out further quantities disguised as materials required for research. All this information adds up to Iran's current ability to flaunt the JCPA at any time, having retained all its capabilities and means of the production for breakout to developing a nuclear weapon within months up to the end of 2017 rather than years. And here's the real scary part, and something that should be your greatest fear. After marking strides in their missile program, the Iranians would also soon be able to mount a nuke on an intercontinental ballistic missile which could wipe out a European or Middle East city. You see, it's one thing to be able to create a nuclear weapon, but if you can't mount it on a intercontinental ballistic missile or have a delivery system in order to get it from your backyard to somebody else's backyard, it does you a little good. That's why North Korea continues to launch missiles against the wishes of the West, because when it comes to a nuclear weapons program, you must have an accurate missile system in order to get it from A to B and there accurately. Well, this report is saying that Iran, within time, very little time, they may have that weapons system delivery. And that should take you from fear to a greater fear, especially if they are able to achieve that goal. And of course, we as Christians should not fear, because we know who is ultimately in control. But these are some of the news headlines that are taking place that basically support Bible prophecy in full. And in fact, some of them have taken about face just in order to head toward in these last days where Bible prophecy said we would ultimately end up anyway. But I'm certainly going to keep my eyes on these situations to see exactly and what time frame it's going to be before this actually takes place. But for many of these headlines, we're only months or years away from some of the moves to support Bible prophecy in full. And certainly, if you don't know the Lord, today is the day of salvation. Don't put it off. You know, besides the fact that we are heading toward the end times very quickly, you could die today. You know, 150,000 people die every single day. The Bible says that the vast majority of those people will end up in a burning hell. Don't let that happen to you. Come to the Lord today. It's a simple procedure. But there's no prayer in which you have to recite. It's basically, Lord, I know that I'm a sinner. I know that you died on the cross to pay my sin penalty. I now repent of my sins, and I come to you asking you to save me. And Lord, knowing that your word is true, you will. So from this day forward, I turn my life over to you and will serve you. So I would encourage you to make that decision today, because we certainly don't know how much time is left, and you want to get your eternal destination solved as soon as possible. You certainly don't want to be on the wrong side of that road when you finally stand before God, because once you end up in hell, there's no getting out. And you Christians, I would encourage you to get a copy of my Tribulation Period Survival Guide in the hands of every lost friend and loved one that you know. Time is running out, and now we are up to 9 versions of this book. It's free, and maybe heading very soon to a 10th version, which would be Portuguese, which has a readership of somewhere around 300 million people. So slowly but surely, we are trying to make available a Tribulation Period Survival Guide to much of the world. Last video I put out a plea for anybody who wanted to donate toward that 10th version. And we already have several $100s toward bringing Portuguese into the fold. But it's going to take about $500. You may want to give a portion of that. Like I said, $50 here, $50 there would ultimately get that accomplished, but it can't be done without your help. And, wouldn't it be wonderful for you to leave this world and leave behind a translation that is ultimately going to see people saved? And you can leave with the assurance that you helped make some of that happen. So if you do want to participate in donating in this, get with me, and I'll let you know how that can happen. Well, this is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.